Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel of the Underside. We've got a very exciting guest tonight. We're going to talk all things Celtic with a very popular YouTube man. It's Baz from One Celtic Fans View. How you doing, Baz?
I don't know about popular.
Over 21,000 subs, mate. That's amazing, man.
It is when you think about it. It's unreal. But it's a story and a half.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about first, man. I'm really interested in the story behind it, mate. First of all, what made you want to actually start up the channel?
The channel started back in 2009, and it wasn't a Celtic channel. The first 3 videos I put up, I think one of the first ones is I was at Tea in the Park back in the day, and there's a hot air balloon. And for some unknown reason, a video of the hot air balloon was Tea in the Park. You can imagine the mess that you're in. And then videoed my mate, and he was out it, and I'm sticking that on this YouTube. So I stuck it up and nothing really happened. I then put up a video at a house party, me, my brothers, and my mates. And it was only kind of us that knew about it, but it ended up, I think I got about 1,000 views. And then there was a couple of other crazy videos. There was one of my old man, but it was never a Celtic channel to start with for years. And then it wasn't until the Green Brigade really kicked off in 111 with banners and stuff, with big displays, that a few Celtic videos sneaked on. And then it was choice videos then as well. It wasn't your typical modern day football podcast videos, although it was maybe the birth of that type of thing. And what really got me going with YouTube was there was one day we were playing Rangers at Celtic Park, and Rangers fans walked up London Road right up the front of the Celtic Park before the game. And obviously we'd been parked over behind the Emirates, and I didn't have any colours on. That time I'd come out 111 and I was in the Club Celtic lounge. So I had a big jacket on, and I just whips out my phone and I starts filming. I walks right into the middle of the Huns. Right? So they didn't know who I was, and they're looking about, and there's police everywhere around about them. And I'm videoing them, and I just walk right out and then walk through the police and into the Celtic fans. And I'm videoing them, and I stuck it up on YouTube before I went into the stadium. And then I forgot about it. And I checked it about a week later, and it had something like 90,000 views. And I was like, wait a minute. But I'd used YouTube for work. So I knew how to do stuff on YouTube, but it was more for ranking websites and stuff back in the 2010. So it was probably about 2013, 2014, 2015, I'd really started using YouTube for work. And that's all I used YouTube for. I was never a Celtic channel. That was other channels. My work channels were fine. But for the business that I had at the time, the Celtic channel came about where I'd obviously got the money, the channel monetized. It was easier to get the channel monetized then. You didn't need 4,000 watch hours and stuff. I can't even remember what it needed, but because I'd had that one big video with all the views, it got monetized. And this guy said to me, "You'll be able to make money off of YouTube." And I'm like, nah, never. So I started doing kind of vlogs at games 2018, 2019. And then they were kind of picking up, and that's the road I was going to go down. And it was just going to be vlogs at games, and that was it. And I wasn't even on camera. Do you know, it was just at the games. So there's a young boy that still does it. He still goes to games, and he still does vlogs at the games. And that was the only way that's all that I wanted to do. And then obviously COVID hit in the March, and that put a stop to everybody going to football. So during that crazy year of 2020, obviously with COVID happening, shut the business down and all the rest of it. And we ended up moving to Spain, as you do in the middle of a pandemic. You just sell up everything and bugger off 3,000 kilometres, which we did. And I was missing the football. And when football went, especially once, because my Facebook was full of other bus conveners and folk that still do go to games and stuff. And when they all started going back into the stadium, I can remember sitting in a pub and there was only 4 of us in the pub because of the COVID restrictions watching Celtic. You go to that same pub now during the summer and there's probably about 300 people in the pub in Spain. So it's madness to think of that. But I wanted to do something with the channel. I wanted to keep YouTube going. And that's when I set up the first AI woman voice news reporter. So I did that for about 2 seasons. And it was just Celtic news. And it used to go out about 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 in the morning. And it was, once it was done, I would get up, do that, and then just get about my day and forget about it. And it kind of it started to pick up. But I knew it was a concept that could always be copied, especially with the way that channels were going. And it happened. There was 2 or 3 other copycat channels came out. So I always kept the name of the channel, the One Celtic Fans View. And then I was like, it got to the Christmas. I actually did one video where I done me as a kind of podcast, and I hated it. I hated it. I did it, and I was like, to the missus, I was like, nah, I can't do it. It's like too many of my mates will see me. It's like folk that go to games, they're like, what are you doing? It's like, what the fuck? And it's like, that's why we've not seen you at games. And I was like, nah, I just couldn't do it. And then that was before the Christmas. That was way before the Christmas. It was the beginning of the season. And then I got to about the Christmas time of the second year. And I was like, right, I'm going to have to do something to change the channel, because you could see other channels starting to pick back up, and the Celtic fan media thing had kicked in because Celtic had brought in, they'd fell out with the mainstream media because mainstream media was changing the narrative of what was getting said at Celtic press conferences. They were only taking little sentences and then putting out that as the narrative of the AGM. Not AGM, got AGM on the head after talking of the press conferences. So Celtic went, right, we're going to put out the press conference first on our own social media, and we'll get in Celtic fan media so that Celtic fans know what's been said, and you're not getting the agenda of Sky and BBC and The Sun and Daily Record type thing. So when I'd seen that kind of kicking off, I was like, I'm going to have to change the channel, and I'm going to have to go on screen. And I was shitting myself, to be honest. I was like, fuck. And even when I come home, because I was dreading the first time of coming home, and then it's like, do you remember when it was like, I would get messages, and it's like, so you're behind the channel. And it's like, of course it was me behind the channel. You knew it was my channel when I was back at the games. But there was a lot of people, I mean, it grew thousands and thousands of subscribers. So I was like, it's something that works. And then obviously when the COVID restrictions went on for longer, because I still had my season ticket we had 5 season tickets in our name, in the family name. And I had my season ticket for 2 years after I moved here. But I never went to games because I couldn't get over. For about 1.5 years, the restriction, because you had to get certificates to say that you'd been jabbed and all this nonsense to fly and everything. I was like, fuck, not a chance. I was like, I'm not getting any of that shit. I'm not getting jabbed, and I'm not getting fucking none of that nonsense. So we didn't get jabs because we didn't want to get jabbed. We didn't get jabbed because we weren't in the UK, and we weren't through the health system yet in Spain. So we were at an in-between. So that was the real reason for not getting any vaccinations at the time. No, I'm glad that I didn't, because I've known people that's been really ill with it, but that's a whole different conversation. So the football channel kind of progressed with me being on the channel. And then it's always been about trying to just progress the channel, trying to make it all encompass of trying to get Celtic fans' views without having and making it look like every other podcast, because there's a lot of competition out there for podcasts now. I mean, 4 years ago there was hardly any competition for podcasts. You go in now for every single football club, You know, if you go down south, I mean, some of the views that some of the podcasters get down there, it's unbelievable. You know, and I mean, look at Mark Goldbridge. Brent, he's a millionaire now off the back of YouTube. You know, but it's just a pity that Scottish football isn't viewed the same as what English football is. And then there'd be quite a few happy folk in Scottish football. But that's how the channel started. And it's just kind of grown arms and legs for there. And now it's something that I enjoy. It's part of my daily routine, as they say.
I was just thinking with you about you saying you were shitting yourself and stuff like that. That's the way I felt, because I remember the first one me and Jamie done together. Jamie's like, "Oh, you done amazing," and I texted him like, "Fucking delete that." I hated every single bit of that. And after he was like, "No, you were fine." He was like, "I'll put it up. I'll put it up for a wee while and see how it goes." And I'm like, "Jamie, take that fucking down." And I'm like, "No." But
See,
after a while, like you said, you just get a wee bit more
Yeah.
confident and stuff like yourself.
The reason that I wore the hat to start with and my glasses, and at the time I didn't need to wear my glasses, right? I only need them for reading. I don't wear glasses any other time. I just use them for reading. And when I first went on the channel, I thought I'm going to have to, because when I was still at the games, I hadn't shaved my head at that time. But I was still going to games. I hadn't shaved my head. But when I moved here, I was like, just I wet shave my head every 2 days now. And it was always a case of when I done this channel, I was like, I need to disguise myself a bit. Because I don't want it to look like me. And that was the insecurities that I had at the time. And then the hat thing kind of stuck. And then it's hard to then sort of just completely change that. Do you know what I mean? So I mean, folk will be like, "Oh, take your hat off," and I'm like, "No, it's a thing for the channel now. I've done it for years now, so it just kind of sticks." So I think I'd be more embarrassed if I did. But then I've got other channels where I don't wear the hat. That's the thing. You know what I mean? So, and people know, they know the channels and that, but it's a thing with the Celtic channel. But and that all comes back down to doing it at the beginning. And I think it's hard doing YouTube for that perspective, because you know it's your peers, you know it's your mates that are going to see it and they're going to pass comment on it. You know, and I think that's always the hardest thing, especially when you're doing this and you're putting yourself out there. I mean, you get a lot of love, you get a lot of hate. So my channel gets a shitload of hate. I think the ban list is probably bigger than the subscriber list, to be honest. You know, but it is what it is. You just get on with it.
What I think I love most about your channel, mate, obviously watching it for a wee while now, is obviously a couple of things. Your attention to detail way, you do your research on things every day, you can tell that. But also, I think what's most impressive is the fact that you're sitting doing it on your own. There's nobody kind of going back and forth with you. Obviously, you're reading the chat and that sometimes, but was that ever a thing that you maybe thought about, was getting a co-host or whatever, or was it always just a case of I'll do it my own?
It's a difficult one, because I've seen, and I know a few guys that have had joint channels that have got quite big, and then there's been inevitable fallouts over money and stuff and the way the channel run and stuff, and I always think that I've always, in business, I know I always used to have, I mean, it's ironic that we talk about football having 5-year plans. I always used to have a 5-year plan or something. And, my businesses went through 5-year plans. Now we changed them up to try and just keep them ahead of the competition. And I think that's, if anything, I am going to bring on someone to the channel, but it's going to be more in a producer side of it. So there'll be live stuff that will be going on, especially with the live videos. So it'll look a bit more like a lot of the bigger channels down south. It will have interactive, when somebody gets a card, it'll come up that they've had the card, and it'll have the stats coming up and everything. So that's all going to be all part of the screen. It's going to be pulled off a different website. And my brother's trying to phone. Look at the group chat. What? Oh, for fuck's sake.
See, this is the life of a daily
I know.
podcaster, do you know what I mean? Like, busy man.
Seek. Oh no, it's just the last live that we did. That's cool. There's a screen went up, and I need to go in and edit it off. I'll do that in a minute. Once we're off this, it's never ending. Anyway.
No, I'm just going to ask, like, growing up, who were like your Celtic heroes? Who were the ones that you were looking up to the most?
I grew up with my dad was best mates with Roy Aitken at the time, and I mean Roy Aitken was in our life quite a bit when we were younger. I've got pictures of myself with Roy Aitken when I was I don't know, about 10, 11, 12, and I can remember going. Roy Aitken used to give us our tickets to go to see Celtic. And I remember the first time I went, I think it was, I don't know if it was a game against East Fife. It was a Scottish Cup game. I can't remember who it was. It was way back in the 80s. And we went up to this ground and they opened this, it was like a shed door. And then there was envelopes pinned on the back of this door. And that was the tickets for the players. And that was how the tickets, that's how you got your tickets for the players back in these days. It was madness, and you got in. But I was never allowed to go to derby games. They wouldn't let me go to that. But all my mates were getting on the bus, $5 for the bus, $5 for the ticket into the game. Shows you how long ago that was.
A $5.
And, yeah, I know. And it was interesting. I can remember being in Bobby Lennox's house when I was a kid. I have no idea who he was. Being in Bobby Lennox's pub, no idea who he was. He was my dad's mate. And then years later, you're like, Bobby Lennox. And I'm like, James, fucking Lisbon Line. And I was like, no idea. But yeah, I remember being at Celtic Park for my birthday when I was around about, I was either 12, 13, 14. I'm not sure what age it was. But we were going straight to see Roy Aitken, and we're going to go out for lunch. And we're standing in the centre circle at Celtic Park, and get my dad's taking my picture with Roy in the middle of the park and everything, the old Celtic Park, and I'm transfixed with a player sprinting up and down the sideline after training, after coming up for Lennoxtown. And it was Paul McStay. He'd done his own extra training session after they'd been down to Lennoxtown, and he was still doing sprints and stuff, and I was like, unbelievable. And then back in those days, there was no Celtic canteen for the players, so they used to all go to Ian Skelly's. And the garage there had a cafe bit at the back, and they used to all go there for their lunch. And it was mental. I'm sitting with Murdo McLeod, Davy Provan, Pat Bonner, Roy Aitken, Murdo McLeod, I said to him, and my dad. And I'm sitting, again, they're all sitting just talking, and I'm like this. And then in walks Tommy Burns with Rosemary. And Tommy Burns has got these wee round specs on. And I'm like, Tommy Burns wears specs. So, I mean, it was the proper old round specs, you know what I mean? And he had this big long raincoat on, and I'm like, that's Tommy Burns. That's freaking Tommy Burns. It was surreal. It was absolute madness. And then they say that you're born into the Celtic family, which you kind of are. You just then you start going to games and stuff yourself, and then it just grows arms and legs, and that's it. You know.
You were talking about derby games. I was just thinking about my first one. I think I got scalped with a lighter.
No.
It was Vinegar Hesseling scored in the last minute. I think my uncle, I was about 13. I don't know how it was roughly about 12, 13, and I don't know how my uncle picked me up, but he kind of picked me up, and I got scalped with a lighter, and it cracked me in the back of the head, and I'm just like, what the fuck was that? He picked it up, and he was like, it's all right, wee man. We snouting the top of the stand.
One of the craziest memories I've got as Celtic was the Celtic Liverpool game, the charity game for the Hillsborough disaster. And I can remember being at that, and we're watching the game, and I can't even remember the score because I'm listening to a Liverpudlian and a Glaswegian standing right behind me. And for the whole game, they spoke about the poll tax. And that's all they spoke about, because the poll tax wasn't out in England then. So they were talking about, you know, where it was unfair why it was out in Scotland and all the rest of it. And it was like, all they did for the whole 90 minutes was talk about the poll tax. And I was young at the time, and I'm like, and you know, folk these days go, don't bring politics into football. And I'm like, politics has always been at football at Celtic. It's always been, you know, it's always where people for different areas, not only Scotland, but England, Ireland, get to meet up and talk about politics that affects everyone, you know, of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it was just this one. That's the only memory I've got memories of games as well, where we had a minibus that had fucking grates on the window. It was like a police riot bus that we were in, and that managed to get his windows smashed coming back for Ibrox one game. But that was the crazy old days.
I remember going to a game. I don't know. I must have been about 12 or 13. It was the season that I think, was it many seasons did we play at Hampden? Was it just one?
Just the one.
Just the one.
The one, wasn't it? It was that season, and we beat Rangers at Hampden, and we came back. And you remember the Rangers pub in Glasgow, the Glaswegian? We were outside that, and the supporters bus, man. This guy came out and full of rage. Do you know what I mean? And he came out and he started smashing against the windows, man. And I'm a wee boy, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Do you know what I mean? Like, pure terrified. Absolutely. I mean, one guy thinks he can take on an entire bus.
I mean, back in the 80s and 90s, football was mad. I mean, football was nothing these days. I mean, I can remember people saying that, you know, going to Ibrox was probably the safest ground when we had the full capacity. Do you know, during the sort of 2010s and that, it was the safest game to go to. It was safer going to Ibrox than it was going to Hearts.
Yeah,
because Hearts is
smaller restrictions and stuff.
Too small a stadium, and their coins can get right out of you. They've done many a time, but no.
Just because you were talking about buses there, the Old Firm, but I remember our bus, we got banned off a couple of the bus companies due to drinking and all that stuff. There's a couple of bad things, and after this bus was driving up, we seen it. Bright blue, royal blue. Like, that can't be our bus, surely, and it parked right in front of us. Like, oh, you's going to the Celtic game? I'm not fucking going in this. Celtic fans were scared more windies. It wasn't Rangers fans. Everyone's wearing tops like this. Like, no, but one of yous, it's all right. And they're just, that's a fucking big blue bus.
We used to use Prentice buses for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, that was a laugh. But I remember when we played the pre-season Euro games at Murrayfield because of the Commonwealth Games.
Aye.
Well, bus was coming through for 5, so the bus pulls up outside Murrayfield, and then on comes this guy, and I'm like, "What the fuck are you? Get off the bus!" I knew he wasn't on the bus because I was bus convener, right? And he was like, pulls out his fucking car. It's a copper, eh? And I'm like,
oh no, man.
And I'm like, right, I know that the tins of beer are hidden. You'll no find them. And all he does is he opens up plastic bags that's sitting on seats. He can't go searching in bags, right? So I'm like, right, he can't go searching in bags. All he can do is pull out ones that are sitting on seats. So I knew there was loads of empties sitting about. So he goes up the bus and he comes back down with these 3 carrier bags with empties in it. And he's like, "You've been drinking on the bus?" And I'm like, and by this time, the driver, right, his fucking sweat's coming off on me. He's like, he's thinking, I'm going to get hit with a 500 quid fine here, right? Because it was a bus driver got fined for having drink on the bus. So Peter's he's sitting there sweating, and I'm going, "No, we haven't." And he's like, "I've got the fucking tins here." And I was like, "Aye." I said, "The driver picked us up on the motorway just outside Kelty." I said, "We'd been having a barbecue at a park. We'd had tins of beers at the park. We packed all our rubbish up and we brought it on the bus. We came down the motorway right into the town. We've never stopped, and we've never been able to put it in a bin."
That's not bad.
That story was obviously that's been rehearsed for years, isn't it?
That's not too bad. That one.
There, right? Yeah, the driver's like that. He's just looking at me and he's like, "How the fuck did you think that?" And then there's a couple of the older boys are standing at the bus door, eh? And the policeman's like, "Is that right?" And I'm like, "Aye." And he's like, you could see him just cringing. And he's like, fuck it, get them in a bin.
Aye, no got an answer for that one.
And I'm like, listen, if you fucking try and take it to court, that's exactly the story that I'm telling the court when it goes to court. You know what I mean? And he's like, by that time, he's like, fucking get them in the bin and get away. But it was, Jesus, man, that was close.
Like Kevin Bridges, when did I didn't? When did I didn't? I
Aye.
remember thinking, can I prove it, man?
I know. Oh.
Right, guys, I think we've got a wee bit to speak about the current present time. Obviously, we're about to announce a new manager after tomorrow night, it's looking like. Baz, what's your thoughts on the new man?
Well, until Celtic put out their announcement tonight that they're banning the Green Brigade for longer, I was looking forward to it. But I think that I'll back any manager. I backed Brendan Rodgers to stay the 3 years when people were saying that he wouldn't stay the 3 years. I expected him to stay the 3 years, but I mean, when you see what's been going on since the start of the season, I thought he might have stuck it out. But the fact that he walked, it's obviously says there's a lot going on. The new guy coming in, I'm looking forward to his style of football. I think that we needed change. We've been shouting out for change, especially when it comes to the backroom staff. I think that, having that change in the backroom we've seen an immediate benefit over the last 5 weeks. It's the change for that perspective has been worth it. Can Wilfred come in, and he's been given a hand up by the manager, by Martin O'Neill. Many times has John Kennedy been there and looking after stuff, and we've lost games. The squad hasn't got better. Players have down tools, if you like, and it's like you couldn't wait for the next manager to come in. It's only because Martin O'Neill's turned it around so well, and we've got it back down to 2 points. I think that if he comes in and plays his style of football, I think a lot of Celtic fans will be excited. Come 5 weeks' time, if everything goes to plan, I think that there'll be a lot of people pleasantly surprised by this guy. But we'll just need to wait and see.
I think you're right, mate. I think there could be, everybody needs their opportunity. People are saying, look, it's past, but everybody needs their opportunity. A big club to prove themselves, and this is obviously Nancy's big chance in that. But do you know what I'd like to see? I know there's been talk and stuff, but I really would at this point like to see Martin O'Neill in some sort of advisory role. I mean, he's been at the club now for several weeks.
I wouldn't want him. My personal opinion is I wouldn't want him answering Nicholson or anybody else. I want him above that. I want him in Lawwell's position.
I don't think Martin O'Neill would ever take that. Like, I think
it's not a 5-day-a-week job. Do you know what I mean? Lawwell's job is CEO. It's a phone call. It's turning up for games. It's the father figure of the club, and I think that would suit Martin down to a T. And it would. I think that if he was in that position at the AGM, he would have got people to calm down. Mm-hmm. It's where Lawwell's just antagonism. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, well, if you didn't behave, we'll shut the meeting down. Do you know?
That's pathetic, man. It's pathetic.
It's either his way or the highway. It's where Martin O'Neill would sort of want to calm the situation down, and I think that's the type of person we need. Somebody that, I mean, Martin O'Neill, he doesn't need to have a great business sense because he's not making business decisions within the club. All the CEO is just the father figure, the spokesman, and that's what we need at Celtic right now. Because when you get that change, hopefully that you can then get the change of Nicholson and Lawwell, and then Chris Mackay.
Because I do think, with aspects of like the business and finance and all, I think Celtic have got it spot on. But when it's coming to the football side, the most important side, really, I feel that's where we're lacking. And you're probably right, getting somebody who is a quote unquote Celtic man who's been at the club on the football side. I think you're right. I think it would benefit everybody all round. And like you're saying, with the calm situation, I think it's more of it's a mutual respect thing. Like Martin respects the fans and we respect him right back. And
definitely.
Lawwell's always had his haters, all the people in the stands. There's always been a few people that get him get him away and away for the club and stuff like that. So maybe I think that'd be spot on the way you're saying it.
Definitely, and I think obviously what you're saying about the football side of things, that's why I want Martin O'Neill in there, because obviously he's been there for several weeks now. Obviously, he's watched the club for years and years as a fan. He'll know what we need in January and what's required to kick his own. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but like Martin O'Neill said today, that's not his decision. You know, the new man. I mean, Martin O'Neill said today that he hopes that Fozzie and Sean Maloney can kick on with their own coaching careers because they're great coaches.
Mm-hmm.
But Sean, I always thought that it was weird that Sean Maloney came to Celtic for the loans manager. I always thought that was above his pay grade, or below his pay grade. You know, I thought that was a step backwards for him.
Right.
Because he is a good coach. I mean, he's coached at the highest level as an assistant manager. You know, I mean, he's coached at international level. He was with Martinez for a good while. You know, he knows how to get the best out of superstars, if you like, but he also knows what it takes to bring younger players through the club. Do you keep him there as pathway manager, where he's, and for what I've heard, he's out actively speaking. He was up speaking to Cali Thistle about having a better working relationship with them and sending players up there. Something that hasn't really been getting done with Celtic before. I mean, we sent players to Admiral Wacker, youth players, and it's like, what's the point? You send them over to Austria, you never hear of them, again. They get to the end of their youth contract and they're gone. And it's like, well, was that not a wasted? But we put them out there to get better. I said, well, no, keep them somewhere close so you could see them. And the fact that Sean Maloney goes to the games and speaks to the parents, and I think that's been the biggest improvement. So Sean Maloney said that he wants to go back to that job because that's you've got a bit more longevity with that job, let's face it, than you have as a manager or assistant manager. Because the way that Celtic's going, every 2.5 years, we're getting in a new guy. And there's not going to be many John Kennedys in that position now for 27 years. Do you know what I mean? I think we're going to get back to when a manager leaves, his backroom staff's going to leave with him. So it's hard how if it's really up to the manager whether he wants Martin O'Neill there as a, you know, sometimes it doesn't go too well at football. I mean, look at Man United. Fergie was always kicking about upstairs and they've just went from one shit show to the other. So there is that side of it as well.
But if there was anybody to put in that role, Martin O'Neill.
Martin O'Neill,
definitely the fact Martin O'Neill even said yesterday, that's down to the manager and all that. That shows that he's going to have respect if he does get a role like that.
Yeah. I mean, he would love a role at the club, but not a 5-day-a-week job. No 7 days a week. Managing Celtic 7 days a week, 24/7. He wouldn't want to be as heavily involved as that. But yeah, maybe, I don't know if a director of football position, I mean, the last time we tried to go down the director of football stuff was him from the Reporter, remember, under Doug Leash and fucking John Barnes.
What
about on the park, mate? What you making us playing at the moment? I was listening to your live last night, and you were talking about Liam Scales. If it was the season was to stop right now, he'd be a player of the season. I totally agree with that. I think he's been brilliant this season. I think the only weakness for Liam Scales is his passing. Unfortunately, I think he's pretty brutal at passing. But as a defender,
that's his downside. He's shot pulling.
But no, I think he's pretty bad at that as well. But like as a defender, though, when the ball's into the box, he's more often than not the first man to the ball and stuff. So I agree with you, mate. So Liam Scales. Who else has ticked your boxes this season?
Callum McGregor, but he does it every season. He's consistent. And when Callum McGregor was out for 3 games last season, we all seen the drop in that midfield. Callum McGregor gets a load of stick, and it's always, I always say that it's always the Scottish boys or the Irish boys that gets the most stick because they're there consistent. They're there for longer than stars that will come in for 2 years, and bugger off. But I would say Callum McGregor for consistency. And then we're starting to see a bit more of Arne Engels, a bit like what it was last season. He's still got a long way to go. But I'll back Callum McGregor on his judgment of Arne Engels, saying that for somebody at 22-year-old, when he was 22-year-old, he was getting shipped off to Notts County or wherever it was. So I think we're in a good place, but we need better players. The way that I see it is Callum McGregor always had better players around his midfield. He had Scott Brown basically for the whole of his career playing next to him. I mean, you've got somebody like Scott Brown that's heads and shoulders above you. Callum McGregor's now that player, but he's not good as Scott Brown. So we do need other players. If Rio Hatate was to turn it on for 90 minutes every game, you'd be 25-30 million for Rio.
He's like an enigma.
Aye.
Rio Hatate. One game he's amazing, then you can go 3-4 games forgetting he's playing.
Yeah.
But he's Jamie's favourite player, isn't he?
I've been very critical of Rio Hatate recently. Listen, I think that Rio's living on years ago, to be honest. His past to be honest, when Martin O'Neill first came in, he dropped him for a few games.
Yeah.
And obviously he's back in the team now. But one player that I'm surprised he's dropped the last couple of games is Tanechi. I thought he's been excellent. Obviously, I know his final product hasn't been great, but
it's a weird
I'm a fan
one.
of him.
It is a weird one.
I think that's the issue with Celtic. It is more. I think our defence overall is decent. Our midfield overall, we've got a million defenders, but overall it's decent. But I think the attacking, the front three, even no matter who's going to play, it just doesn't feel right. If you know what I mean, it's like it could be an actual up front with Maeda and the Yang doesn't feel right, or you can put Tanekti there, doesn't feel right. There's something not clicking there properly, and I think that's Celtic's major downfall, and that's Celtic's been bread and butter for how long? The attack.
It's weird that Tanekti he's such a good player, but Martin O'Neill, there must have been something that Martin O'Neill thought, he needs dropped, and only Martin. But then there's Balak Wisher. Whoever looked at him for 2 years at Celtic, you need to ask the question on what on earth were they looking at for 2 years, because I've no idea. I've no idea.
How they're going to run at all, but I like the sign of Negrin. I think Negrin's a good player though. Yeah,
but then he's getting played out of position as well, which is a strange one. It's what is his position? Is it? It's definitely not a winger.
I thought he was more a number 10.
Aye, but I mean, it's all for the new manager is going to come in and change the formation anyway. He's going to change the formation 3-4-2-1, and I think that will make us better defensively in Europe. I'm looking forward to if we play that in Europe. That's going to be a throwback to the Martin O'Neill era of attacking football. And when you listen to some of the interviews that he's done over the years, he certainly doesn't see himself as a manager that's going to hold back. He is going to go all attacking. People going about his win rate being 49%. Brendan Rodgers' win rate at Liverpool was only 50%. I did a video on that about all the different percentage win rates that managers had before they come to Celtic. There was not many over the near enough 100 years that had win rates over 50%. I think there was only a handful. But
I seen an interview with that this morning, and there was somebody saying, "Are you going into this game as an underdog?" And they looked proper offended. It was like, I've got too much respect for myself to call myself an underdog. Is that it's a game of football, it's 11v11. You start the game, then you see who's the ones that are prepared. And I was like, I like that type of aspect. It's kind of like, I don't care who, kind of like Ange in that aspect, kind of like, I don't care who I'm against, it's just 11 men. So like we can get a result off that person. I was like, I kind of like that. Like,
I think the fact that he's took a team to the Champions League final in North America.
Mhm.
I mean, it was playing against South American teams as well. So, it can't be that bad a manager. He can't be. And people will say, well, look where he finished in the league this season. And it's like, well, what did Martin O'Neill achieve before he came to Celtic?
Yeah,
He won one cup, and it wasn't the year before; it was a couple of years earlier. So Martin O'Neill didn't have a fantastic record before he came to Celtic. It was a big risk bringing him.
I did a podcast a few weeks ago with a Columbus Crew podcast, mate, and we were talking about that. Where they finished last season, and the boy said that obviously in America they've got the what do you call that? The managed the
conference.
Aye.
the what?
The conference.
No, what's the guy above? You've got two of them. The general manager.
Yeah, general manager. Aye.
And he said that it was more kind of his fault coming in. Like it was a new guy coming in, and they're kind of they didn't quite click with each other and stuff like that. So that's why it didn't quite happen on the park, sort of thing. So maybe that's something to look into as well. Do you know what I mean? It's obviously black and white looking at it, and you think, oh well, that's not great. But obviously, if things on the right of the club, then
Right. But he's coming for a club that, like you said, that there wasn't going right between them two, and now he's going to a club and it's the board and the fans aren't really liking each other. So he's just going in the one frying pan and the other type of thing. So
what do you think that we need for January? If you were to go out and get a couple of players, what positions do you think we need?
Centre back. I think we need a long-term replacement for Cameron Carter-Vickers. We probably need two centre backs because Jamal Simpson-Pusey will go. So you're talking two centre backs to come in, and this is just to make the squad capable for winning the league. Never mind talking about trying to qualify for the Champions League, but to take us forward, we're going to need to bring in two centre backs. Do we bring in a right back to cover for Alistair Johnson just now? Do we spend that kind of money? Do we bring somebody on loan? Because young Colby Donovan's not the best player. He's still young. Can he progress as a player? Maybe it's the baptism of fire that he needs. Tony Ralston, do you know what you're going to get for Tony? People say that he's no Celtic quality. He came through the system the exact same time as Kieran Tierney. They came through together. Ralston stuck at the one level. You'll get a work rate out of him 100% all day long. That's the kind of he's a Peter Grant type player for me. But then we need, if Rio Hatate is sold, we need somebody in the midfield. Jota's coming back in January, so do we invest in another winger? If Dyson Maeda leaves, we need to bring in a winger and a striker. So, I think there's probably about 7 players that we need to bring in just in the next window, just to make sure that we finished the league strong, and that it also puts us in a good position going into the summer, so that the players have been here. And ultimately, you would want the manager to come in and say, right, the players that we buy now have got to be a quality that will get us into the Champions League next year, because that's where he's going to be judged. Whether Nancy likes it or not, he's going to get judged on the qualifiers of the Champions League next year. And if he fails to get us to them, Ange Postecoglou failed to get us to them, Brendan Rodgers failed to get us to them. If he comes in as an unfancied man and gets us into the Champions League, he'll instantly become a bloody legend in Celtic's eyes. And this is for they are. And it's a long way away. 6 months is a long time in football, but we need to get it right in the next window so that this guy's successful in the summer. And that's hopefully, people say, do you trust the board to do it? Yeah, because the board know that they have to do it. The board know that they can't. The finances of the club's taken a massive hit this year. 40 million straight off of the Champions League. If merchandise sales are down, they're not going to get the 32 million in from that. Even if that goes down to 20 million, say that's 50 million out of the books for next year. If that 50 million comes off your top, that gets closer to the 78 million that you spend out in wages. So then the next thing that happens is if we don't get into the Champions League next year, the next window after that, we start selling off the higher paid players. We start reducing the wage bill. We then go back to the Ronald Isley era, starting bringing in cheaper players, even cheaper than what Ange brought in. And then we've just set ourselves back 10 years. Do you know? And that's what I don't want to happen. And I don't think that even if you were to get a change of the board tomorrow, do you know, there's still a risk that that could happen in the summer.
I
Doesn't
do
matter
feel
who's
like
in charge.
disappointment when on say one way or another, the board has to get it right. Because if they don't, because of how long it's been, and like you said, he's unfavourable with some of the supporters, so they need to have it right. And if not, then after the questions and that anger is just going to rile up, and they'll need to probably will need to be changes in the board.
Personally, I think the board will back Nonce, to be honest. I mean, I know obviously there's a lot of distrust with the board at the moment, and quite rightly so. But I think in the summer there was a bit of cat and mouse between them and Rodgers. You know, it was like sign the contract and we'll back you, and Rodgers was like, "Well, no, back me and I'll sign the contract," sort of thing. And I think obviously it ended badly. But I think they can't afford no to back Nonce. Celtic fans would just not have it, man.
I think that Rodgers was a bit fanciful with the truth with that comment. Do you know, back me and I'll sign the contract. I think it was more, we'll give you the contract if you get us into the Champions League.
Aye.
I think that was what was on the table. You know, it's like, we're not going to give you a contract now, but if you get us into the Champions League through the qualifiers, we'll give you the contract. And I think it was smoke and mirror stuff.
To be honest, I do think that the board did back Rodgers for Scotland in the end. You know, brought Tierney, Negrin, Balashawi, Tunecci, all these guys. You know, Iheanacho. I know that wasn't a great summer, but the problem was they just done it too late.
Yeah, they've done it too late. They've done it too late. I still think that Brendan Rodgers allowing Adam Eder to be sold was one of the craziest decisions that's ever been made, because that has to come from the manager. There's no one upstairs saying we're going to sell Adam Eder at a loss. No businessman in their it was commercial suicide. You know, let's just take a hit on Adam Eder. No, we keep him here till he plays enough games. He scored 29 goals for Celtic. We keep him here till the end of next season, and he scored more goals, so we get the same money back on him. But no, let's sell him now, take what you can for him, and be gone with it.
Look what Rodgers done against Hearts, you know, playing Dane Murray and that. To me, that was just to prove a point, you know. Austin Trusty sitting on the bench, 6 million, and but listen, Rodgers already had previous to that. I love Brendan Rodgers for what he's done at Celtic and all that, but there's no doubt that I think he's quite a huffy guy, you know what I mean? I think that he threw his toys at the pram in the end, Baz.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Total dummy at the pram stuff, but he's got a point, but it's hard because we were taking Brendan Rodgers on his word. And I think what set the tone was the very first press conference of the season, where Brendan Rodgers went, he made it all about him, made it all about his contract. He could have shut that down and said, look, there's a whole season to go. We're not even going to talk about that.
What about it in the summer?
What about that? It's not the time and place. Do you know, we've got a game before, but he made it all about him. You know, he made sure that it was, you know, there wasn't a lot spoken about the team that day. It was all about his contract and about the situation that was alleged going on. And then for Dermot Desmond to come out and say, look, we sat in a meeting with him. What he sat and said the first day of the season was total baloney. Where's Brendan Rodgers now? I mean, if what Dermot Desmond said was made up and false, surely Brendan Rodgers would be going, right, fuck this, I'm getting my lawyer on it. But never. Do you know, there was nothing. Sailed away into the sunset.
That's it. He's living in Marbella or something now, probably sunning it up.
Yeah.
Getting any Gucci bills out.
It's Mallorca right.
Right, Baz, I know you're a very busy man. Thanks very much for coming on, pal. I really enjoy your stream now. Everybody, if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel.
Yep.
Baz, all the best for the future, mate. We'll be tuning into your channel from now on, mate.
You've got a new subscriber for me. If you are one of my subscribers, make sure you subscribe to these guys. Fantastic podcast.
Thanks very much, Baz. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.
Right.